Let's go. So yeah, welcome everybody to the weekly Neo Tokyo Interlinked podcast, Twitter space, just talk corner, whatever you want to call it. Today we are talking about the new hottest topic out on the crypto street, which is Bitcoin's new ordinals and inscriptions. From the Neo Tokyo side today, you have me, Felix. We have Firestorm as well in his office. And we have Zehai and Kyle Wilson joining us as well. Zehai being behind the Neo Tokyo News handle. So welcome everybody. And with us as guesting today, we have Owl.eth and also Charlie or CB Spears. Welcome, guys.
I'm just going by Owl now. The .eth doesn't quite feel right on Bitcoin.
Fair enough. Okay, so just Owl today. But pleasure to having you guys here. So, I mean, let's talk about who you guys are first, and then we can dig more into what ordinals and inscriptions are. So, Owl, do you want to go first?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I've been in the space for just over 2 years now. I started off, I just fell in love with all of it and started off as a mod, eventually made my way into an assistant community manager role. And then for the past year, I was working on this ETH project, Bad Influence, took it through Mint. And then post-Mint, the focus became much more on fundraising and not as much on Twitter and the NFT community. Wasn't as much for me to do, so I started looking for something else, especially as there was this little new surge of life in the space, right? And as soon as I heard about these, I just saw a thread about ordinals on Twitter, and I couldn't stop thinking about them for days. And I hit up my group of friends who normally, we just trade together and ship post, and 5 of them jumped in it with me. And around inscription 600 is when we started getting fully set up, and we really wanted to make something original that we felt wasn't really from the ETH ethos and resonated more with how we perceived the internet at large and BTC ethos. And so Pepes were born.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you so much for the introduction and hearing more about that journey. Charlie, do you want to jump in and give a brief on who you are as well?
Yeah, I'm Charlie Spears in Northeast Oklahoma. I have a Bitcoin mining company with a couple partners here. We come from the world of oil and gas, and so we do that thing, if you've heard of putting Bitcoin mines on gas wells, that's what we do. I've been in Bitcoin a long time, a very long time, I don't actually say how long, but I'm really active in my local community. I organize, along with some other people, a local monthly Bitcoin meetup, and I've always...
you're kind of coming in a little transformery over there.
Yeah, it's getting more and more spotty as well. Soft-drugged.
Kyle, you haven't been on maybe once before on Interlinked, but why don't you give an intro too, just so the people that don't know you can get to know you a bit?
Yeah, sure. I've been in the space pretty much hardcore since 2017. Got into, obviously, Bitcoin was really hot around then, and just been in the space for quite a bit. Fast forward to, I guess, the NFT rush of 2021, jumped kind of back in the swing of things. I've worked for Illuvium DAO, which obviously, if you guys are familiar with that, they're putting out, AAA quality games. And I've also worked for Myria Blockchain, which is a layer 2 solution on the Ethereum network. And then now I'm working for Paul Barron TV or Paul Barron Network, where I do co-hosting, research, and write-ups there, and content creator, do some other stuff on the side as well. But that pretty much sums it up for me.
Sweet. Well, looks like Charlie got bumped off. I did want him to kind of dive into ordinals to start off, but I think, Al, you might be qualified as well. So why don't you just give the people a very high level.
I can give the dumbed down version. Yeah, maybe.
That would be great, because I'm sure there's still people that have been seeing headlines but don't actually know what's going on. So if you can give that
for
overview,
sure,
it'd be great.
For sure. I mean, I discovered this something like 12 days ago and started dedicating sleepless nights and all my time to it about 10 days ago. So if Charlie hears anything wrong, please correct me when he comes back. Basically, something analogous to NFTs have been invented directly on chain on Bitcoin. I don't know. My entire time in the space, all I've been told is that something like that wasn't possible or would never happen on Bitcoin. So as soon as I saw it, I had to learn more. The way that it works is it assigns, this ordinal system assigns a unique numerical identity to each Satoshi on Bitcoin. And there's 100 million Satoshis to one Bitcoin. It's the smallest unit on the network. And because of that unique signature, it acts as its unique point, right? And if you think about what most ETH NFTs are, right? It's a token with a unique identifiable signature that points to media on IPFS or hosted somewhere or sometimes on chain, right? All Satoshis that have been labeled this way in the case of what is being built here are attached to a piece of media or point to a piece of media that's published directly on the Bitcoin blockchain. And so essentially, Rod Armor found a way around there being no NFTs on Bitcoin. Did I do it justice, Charlie?
Not a man in the audience, because he's technical and he's one of the core team members who works with Casey Rodomore. Yeah, so the thing is, like, we've been able to do something like this technically for a while, but to do it as Casey has done it was enabled more effective, more expansively by the Taproot upgrade last year. So yeah, as just to clarify, like, we can inscribe certain Satoshis because we are able to now track them according to what is really an arbitrary tracking scheme that Casey Rodomore came up with. It's just a way, it's kind of a numbering schema to look at the inputs and outputs of a Bitcoin transaction and say, oh, this Satoshi is, tracked here. And then when you attach data to that transaction in the witness data, then that is ascribed to a specific Satoshi. I actually got into this not because of the inscriptions or what we might call the NFT side of things. I actually got into it because I was really interested in the tracking or the ordinal theory of, like, what certain different Satoshis are tracked. Like, that's what got me into it. I was like, oh, there's like certain sats which are like more rare than others. And so that's actually where I came from.
I think people are going to catch on to rare sats extremely soon as a narrative. Just personal speculation.
Yeah, I totally agree, Owl.
I would love to hear a little bit more about that rare Satoshi, kind of topic there. I come from a lot of collecting, have a collecting background, used to collect coins as a kid. And I think that'd be a very interesting topic. And also, with these ordinals, kind of curious, I've seen a lot of sale activity going on, people buying them, maybe get into that a little bit too.
Basically, Casey created this arbitrary convention for rarity that does make some sense, in that the first Satoshi, I believe, mined, is that right, Charlie? In a significant moment of Bitcoin's life. So think the first Satoshi mined after a halvening, right? The first Satoshi ever mined would be the rarest Satoshi, right?
Yep.
Awesome.
So if you've been trying to inscribe something and you've been watching like mempool.space, I know a lot of people are like actually now paying attention to Bitcoin's blocks rolling over now. Each block that's created, we can say, according to Ordinal Theory, according to this numbering convention, the first Satoshi of that block is more special than the others. It's more rare. And so that Satoshi is given this, Casey described it as an uncommon ranking. And a rare Satoshi is the first Satoshi or sat of a difficulty adjustment, which is a mechanism that happens every 2 weeks or every 2016 blocks. And that's a rare sat. And then, they get more rare the more kind of like events that happen in Bitcoin's history. I mean, just to put it simply, like even getting an uncommon sat, the first sat of any block, is very unlikely. There's something like 7,000 or 700,000 uncommon sats so far, and so yeah, they get rarer and rarer. I would, like me, if I made it my life's goal to collect rare Satoshis, I don't think I could get many of the rare ones, which are more special than the uncommon ones. Like, so I was not very much of a collector of NFTs, but I'm a collector of special satoshis.
Which is such a dope, unique aspect to this as well. By the way, to frame it, there are 2.1 quadrillion satoshis.
So I have a noob question. To own an NFT, you have to have it in your Ethereum wallet. How do you own a Satoshi ordinal? How do you prove that it's yours? Is it in a Bitcoin wallet or is it some other way?
It is in a Bitcoin wallet. So I think people will start learning about how Bitcoin's accounting system works, which is a series of what are called unspent transaction outputs and a set of those. Basically, when you spend a Bitcoin or when you send a Bitcoin, it's kind of like if you were like have like a bill for if you like got to pay like 25 cents, but you only have $1 on you. So you hand that dollar over and you'll get change that 75 cents back. So when you send a Bitcoin transaction, it's kind of like you send it out and then you will get change back. And so that is a series of like transactions, whereas it's not like the actual whole Bitcoin sitting there in your wallet. It's really a reference and aggregation of all these transactions. Now, the satoshis are tracked according to these UTXOs, or unspent transaction output. And so when an unspent transaction output is attributed to your wallet, and one of the rare satoshis is in that unspent transaction output, then your wallet owns that Satoshi.
Gotcha. That makes sense. And we have platforms like OpenSea on the Ethereum side where we can display our wallets, display our collections. Is there any UI interface right now to show off what you have in your Bitcoin wallet, or does that not exist yet in this short time frame?
I literally got off my computer where I was copy pasting inscription IDs from command line into a Google spreadsheet so I could reference them on ordinals.com. There's not a wallet viewer app. It is arcane. It is this shit needs to be built out. Basically what you have to do is if you make an inscription, it's got an ID attached to it, and it's like a long string of numbers. And you basically have to find that on ordinals.com, which is an explorer, which basically looks at the Bitcoin blockchain and references the data on there. So like, no, it's not very easy to use. It's a little bit technical, but I've found that even non-technical people, given a really good guide, can figure this shit out. Like, I keep saying this, but God help someone who wants a JPEG and anything stands in between them and that JPEG, because they will figure out how to do it.
Can confirm. I am running a full Bitcoin node on a MacBook Air. That's how degenerate I am.
And how was your process, Owl? How was your process? Was this your first Bitcoin node?
Yep. Literally hadn't touched Bitcoin before. Completely ETH and Solana, pretty much. That's the wave I kind of came in on. I just completely dove. I had to figure it out, right? So I spent a day downloading it, and then I did the full slow index before we figured out the shortcut, which took 3 fucking days. And my friend and I were trying to figure it out the whole time. He got set up in like a day and a half, so we were able to mint a lot of early things too. And yeah, then in order to get like a whole almost consecutive series of Pepes, we made and funded, we like created on Ord 69 wallets and funded them and pushed pretty much all of them at the same time with like a very similar fee rate.
Damn, you were ahead of the curve. I remember going back and forth with you early about this, and you were determined to make this happen. Congrats. Your project fucking rules.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it so much. I'm so happy.
Yeah, this kind of reminds me, like, at least ordinals.com is like the super early days of like NFTs, just like super rudimentary. It's very like interesting because this kind of opens up the door for a lot of different things to like happen, similar to what we've seen in Ethereum, and like what may come from this. That's what my thoughts are. And even the permanence of these like NFT, I don't know if you could call them NFTs technically, but more like, I've heard the term artifacts, but like this opens a whole door for that in terms of the permanent side. What's your thoughts on that, like versus, IFPS and all that?
It's a new standard of on-chain that nothing else compares to. The standard of on-chain published media, in my opinion, is now this.
Yeah, so it's like not only Bitcoin, having, that significance of decentralization, but now you have kind of that JPEG side or the NFT side. But is it fair to call them even NFTs? Like what technically is the proper term? I know ordinals, maybe that kind of phases out, but like, is there a kind of a hip term, if you will, or like a slang term for this?
Oh yeah, I'm gonna quote Casey on this. So we have a Q&A on in the Ordinal. Casey prefers to use the term digital artifacts as like a big kind of catch-all term, and the line is, digital artifacts are NFTs, but not all NFTs are digital artifacts. Digital artifacts are NFTs held to a higher standard, closer to their ideal. For an NFT to be a digital artifact, it must be decentralized, immutable, on-chain, and unrestricted. The vast majority of NFTs are not digital artifacts. NFTs, as they are commonly understood, non-fungible tokens generated on a blockchain, are usually by a smart contract. Inscriptions are unplagued by such flaws. Their content is stored on-chain. An NFT content is stored off-chain and can be lost. Inscriptions are immutable and on-chain on the oldest, most decentralized, most secure blockchain in the world. They are true digital artifacts. So that's kind of how Casey puts it.
Yeah, that's some very interesting. I mean, that sounds like some Yoda stuff going on there, the way he said that. And it makes you think. It makes your brain really try to understand this at a deeper level, and it gets really deep really quickly, especially like the collectability factor and what the value attached to these historic artifacts, if you will. Like it's at such a deeper level, I feel like. And to me, I find that very interesting. Again, having like a collector's background, as a kid collecting coins, figurines, Pokemon cards. So this is definitely interesting. I'm curious to see where this goes.
I just want to jump in there, and just go back to, how they're held and how people can acquire them. Neo Tokyo News, we've been covering this a bit. We had a good article by Chomsky on this a couple weeks ago. And then this week, Phoenix Down wrote this somewhat hilarious article of his experience getting in there and acquiring his first ordinal. He did so through just getting the Sparrow wallet instead of doing the full Bitcoin node. After I read his article, it sounded a little too sketchy. So I've been on that same track that was just mentioned before. I'm on like day 3 of trying to download this node. What would you say is like the difference between those two routes? Do you think it's just much more advisable to just get the full Bitcoin node and wallet like that? Or are there other ways, like with the Sparrow wallet, that is doable?
You remember when I kind of stumbled over myself trying to explain unspent transaction outputs and all that stuff? So technically, you can have any Satoshi in any type of wallet. But what in order to be able to control and not like accidentally send that Satoshi away, your wallet needs to basically adopt Ordinal Theory, or that tracking mechanism that Casey came up with. And what Sparrow Wallet does is I actually strongly endorse Sparrow Wallet as a general good wallet service. It lets you control these unspent transaction outputs really well, and it's just a very good product. But if you want to inscribe something yourself, you actually have to have a full indexed copy of the Bitcoin blockchain. And so that's when we talk about running a full node. In order to be able to like know where all your Satoshis lie and where everybody else's Satoshis exist, you basically have to have your computer has to go through the whole Bitcoin blockchain and like check every single transaction and map it all. And what I think is, because what this is, when we talk about Ordinal Theory, it's really embedded in a client that if you look, it's called Ord client. It's this client that runs on top of a node, basically, and it just applies the Ordinal Theory to what already runs underneath it. So if we want to see other wallets that are like more user-friendly, kind of like the MetaMask or the Phantom, experience that normal people can use,
that'll just be other really good wallets like Moon Wallet, Wallet Satoshi, Blue Wallet, integrating the idea of ordinal theory and tracking into their wallets. So like, if there's any wallet manufacturers or software people out there and they're looking at this, and I assume they are, they're probably scrambling to try to either reject it because they hate it on principle, or embrace it because they're really excited about attracting a new user base. So like it'll be a little while, I think, before we see it being super user friendly. But again, like there's already like GitHub guides out there to be like, follow this process. You may not know what you're doing, but this is how you do it. And so, yeah, if you just want to receive an inscription or receive an ordinal that's a Satoshi, you can follow the Sparrow Wallet guide. The one that's floating around does work. Just make sure it's the right one.
I'm kind of curious too, because I know like, implementing like back then they implemented SegWit and then Taproot, of course, recently. What about the legacy Bitcoin still on that, original, I guess, infrastructure? Like, what does that look like? Can you even do an ordinal if it's not like the SegWit Taproot Satoshis, or what does that look like?
So technically, if you have any Bitcoin wallet ever, it has certain Satoshis in it. And if you were to send an inscription to a wallet that doesn't have, that's an old wallet using an old format, that inscription would live there. It's really about being able to choose what to do with that and how to control it. So, and that's one of the cool things about Bitcoin is that it's always backwards compatible. Like if you have a wallet, the wallets of 10 years ago still work with the wallets today. Now the new wallets today have some more complexity to the transactions, depending on which upgrade and kind of language they're speaking. You can think of like the different upgrades to Bitcoin as like just further extrapolations upon the same shared language. So they can communicate, but some communicate a little bit differently if they're newer. But that's the cool thing about Bitcoin. It's always backwards compatible, and that's by design.
So over time, Ethereum NFTs have become more and more complex, where projects like NeoTokyo and others have, taken generative art that can also be changed over time and combined with other NFTs to affect that art, to add attributes, change the metadata. And so like where Ethereum NFTs have headed over time, adding the complexity, but also sacrificing that immutability is kind of the opposite of what this is starting out as. You mentioned, Charlie, like you haven't been into Ethereum NFTs over the past couple of years, but this as a Bitcoin guy is something you're really into. Is that the reason why you like it so much? Because it can't be tampered with, because metadata can't be changed, and you know that your asset will be the same asset 2 years from now. The person who created it can't affect that. Is that what attracts you to this?
Kind of, because I've always thought, I might get excommunicated from Bitcoin maximalism for saying this. I've always thought NFTs are really fucking cool. I've thought that the way they currently existed on Ethereum or other blockchains was like kind of imperfect, or it not really like kind of a shadow of what we imagined they would be. And seeing them on Bitcoin, it feels much more natural. Like this seems like what it should be. The immutability specifically is the main thing for me. There's a whole lot more to that, which is kind of technical and complex and also quite controversial right now. But I'm just glad that Bitcoiners like me can finally take the exuberance and excitement and cool shit that creatives do and just apply it in Bitcoin.
Yeah, I remember, I think what was SegWit was 2018 or 20, I can't remember when it was, but I remember there was a couple camps back then, should there be a soft fork, should there not? So yeah, it seems like there's always kind of those different camps in Bitcoin itself, which, a lot of the Ethereum folks out there may not realize that, the different changes to Bitcoin, keep it as, quote unquote, pure as possible. And then some people like, people that like NFTs like to see this whole ordinal movement, as it seems.
What do you think, Al? How do you view that, like the limitations that we have right now with these new Bitcoin NFTs versus the flexibility and creative things we can do on Ethereum. How have you been thinking about that?
I actually had this idea about it the other day that just popped into my head and I liked. And I think a new iteration of the internet and web that many of us like to imagine, I think Ethereum NFTs in the future become these hyper utility things, right? Flexible and technological. But as we know in the NFT space, many of the things that are the most highly valued are just images on chain. I think Bitcoin as a canvas for those images is going to be a huge thing in the evolution of Web3 as we like to imagine it. I just see ETH as kind of a technological, flexible, you can create theoretically a lot more things, right? Whereas this is like you're inscribing it on chain. It's just art. And that's awesome.
There's something kind of like special about inscribing too. It feels kind of reverent, you know? And I really like that word because it feels like because what you are, you're doing something permanent. And I think you should think of it like that. And I also think you should treat it with respect. I love, I say respect, but we got fucking Pepe's in here. Pepe's are just cool. It's like that's an OG internet respect. But I don't know, like if I'm going to be putting stuff on here forever. So one of the first things I did was shout out my lovely wife. So I wrote her a nice love you at Lolo Streams. So yeah, because that's going to be on there forever.
I started with memes and I put up one of my art pieces in the first 1K just because I was scrambling for content.
Yeah.
Right on. We got a few people already dropping into the chat to ask a couple questions. I definitely think that's the place to go. Probably not going to have too much time to bring people up, and we're probably not going to bring you up if your name is I Hate Ordinals. It's a nice try there. But yeah, just checking this out. Some of the questions coming in already are saying like, oh yeah, what's the next one coming out? How can we get in? We got plenty of degens listening in. And they, when you see this opportunity where there's no marketplace and, you have to pretty much be already in the scene to get in on it, you're getting in early. It also seems like there's plenty of dangers that people could come up against. I know that's definitely true in the whole NFT world on Ethereum. What would you say? I mean, is this a dangerous thing to get into? Is there something that people should be heads up on? I know all these deals are done OTC.
That's the biggest thing.
Yeah.
Just having handled a bunch of them already, there's with the way it works at this stage, so much trust needs to be involved, just built into the way you're selling a collection, right? You can receive these, and several people who have acquired Pepe's have received them as Sparrow wallets, but right, that's just basically sending it to a vault that you can't really yet open. I think, you have to trust someone to send you what you pay for, and that's pretty fucking daunting at the end of the day.
And usually the founder of the project is who's in the middle there and trying to officiate the exchange.
Yeah, I do it with a few team members. We have multiple Ord wallet setups.
So I'm curious, like, what's phase 2 of this look like? We're I feel like in this phase 1 kind of renaissance boom here, seeing like literally tens of thousands of these be inscribed. Like, I think yesterday, it hit like 10K. Now we're beyond that. It like went to like, tripled that like in the same amount of time. So it seems like we're in this kind of phase 1. What's the next phase of this? What do you guys see that's going to happen next? We're going to see people build obviously like these applications, marketplaces? Like, what do you guys see happening next?
Definitely those. There's going to be a blossoming of new narratives. I think legitimate artists who put a lot of thought into one-of-ones and are inscribing them are going to be a narrative in themselves as this new type of on-chain art. I think rare satoshis are going to be a huge vector for all of this because it's a different type of collecting that I feel like Bitcoin-focused people might be able to get more into, potentially. And then, for now, the main narrative that's evolved is like historical, right? It seemed like the most important thing was to be part of the first 10K originally. And then I think we're past 40 now. I'm not 100% sure. I haven't checked today. But it's going so much faster than I ever imagined even.
Yeah, I'll echo what Owl said. In the near term, there's a couple tools things that are being built out. One is permissionless swaps that'll be integrated into the Ord client itself soon. TM, that's a dev priority. Again, the developers are just Casey and the junior dev who he's hired, and then a handful of friends trying to like keep the wheels on the bus. Long term, I think collecting rare sats is the game, and a couple people have begun to figure out how to do it. Diving into that will teach you a lot about how Bitcoin works, the timing of Bitcoin blocks, and a lot of the design decisions about it. And then we will also see it not be quite very. If a lot of people are inscribing, it's not going to be cheap to use Bitcoin, and there will develop a whole market around how your transactions are included in Bitcoin blocks. And that is another conversation, both exciting and controversial. One of my hopes, though, is that this will be the dawn of a period where Bitcoin becomes fun again and cool and perhaps more inviting to people. That's the message I want to leave with, is like, Bitcoiners have always been at the forefront of innovation. Sometimes we turn inwards and we become kind of bitter, and sometimes there are eras where we blossom and we really get to take the reins and do cool shit. And I hope this is one of those periods.
Charlie, you have a Bitcoin mining company that you mentioned. Has this had any negative impact on that business or on the blockchain in general? I'm sure there's been some drama around that, but could you go into a little more detail on that area?
So we've seen a slight uptick in fees. Bitcoin miners get paid by the block rewards, so new Bitcoin issued, plus transaction fees that happen in that period. So I've made a little more money this week, which is great. I will probably refrain from commenting too much on where that's going or my opinions on that. I try to remain agnostic about that subject for the time being. We're going to see Bitcoin be really, the fee market of Bitcoin be really developed. And so we've got Beezy in the audience. He works for Galaxy Digital. He's putting out some research on that. If you're in the business of like researching like the more of the kind of esoteric stuff of Bitcoin, now is a heyday for you to finally use your skills and chops. I will also shout out, right now there's really no tooling available, and I will use this platform to shill a project I'm involved with. It's ordinalhub.com, which is kind of your display ranking project overview. A lot more features going out to that soon. You may see like some tweets about that. I recommend you follow the account, but it's ordinalhub.com. Oh, they're listening right now.
Yeah, so the UI looks really great. I mean, I'm on the site actually now. Looks very fun, and yeah, definitely gonna check that out later for sure.
Al, I'm curious, like what are next steps for you? Just in the last couple of days, it's gone from we're in the 10K the first, and now we're blowing past 30K. Do you want to give some background on like what your collection is and what your short-term plans are?
So we just made 69 Pepes for the culture. We're auctioning off a chunk of them still, just in our Discord most days. We still, a lot of this space so far, Bitcoin is figuring it out as we go, but it has been going pretty well. Our team, really went all in as soon as we found out about this. So Pepes are also not, in fact, far from the only thing we've built as a coherent collection in the first 10K. And honestly, I'm pretty excited to see how we can string together, lore-wise, concept-wise, what we've built.
Hey, Felix, did you have any like technical dev questions you needed to get out there? I would love to dive in a little deeper in our last few minutes.
Yeah, sure thing. I mean, so one question that keeps popping into my head when we're talking about really storing things on chain is, are there any restrictions when it comes to storage? So how much can you actually store per ordinal or inscription?
So the amount of data you can like fit into a Bitcoin block is about 4 megabytes. That, there's more to that. So there is kind of like a file size limit. I understand. You can put any data you want. So what you're doing is adding information to the transaction, and that information can contain anything, and it can be positive or negative, or anything in between. So there's nothing stopping that information on the Bitcoin blockchain. That's a strength of this. I prefer overwhelmingly outweigh the weaknesses.
So it sounds somewhat similar to the other limitations of fully on-chain NFTs as well, tying back to the whole artifacts mentioned you talked about before. The other thing that I'm thinking of is, what would the future look like for ordinals if we're looking at stepping away further into technological deep dives and essentially deriving more valuable things than just the artifacts themselves? Because to my understanding, there isn't really too much smart technology you can build around ordinals unless you want to have to deviate from the chain itself, right? Or am I wrong there?
It's still very early days, and I'm actually probably not the best person to talk about this. There's an interesting mechanic called a partially signed Bitcoin transaction. You should follow Danny Deasy. He's the guy behind the Astral Babes project, and he's probably one of the more insightful people who's working in inscriptions, ordinals, who can talk about what that looks like. And I'm of the belief that there's a lot more that can be built on Bitcoin than has been built on Bitcoin.
Yeah, I feel like this kind of opens a big Pandora's box for Bitcoin. And go ahead, Felix, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I can definitely agree with that as well, especially given how far other chains have come along as well when it comes to the smart blockchain technology and all those things. Bitcoin can definitely develop a lot more there as well. So go ahead, Kyle.
Oh yeah, it just opens up Pandora's box. I mean, like you guys were saying, Bitcoin being kind of the innovators in the space originally, the developers are still there. I could see them doing a number of things too. Curious what will happen around that as well, Felix. And if there's partial signatures or wallets that somehow identify these satoshis and that verifies the ownership, then I could see this being absolutely massive for Bitcoin itself and bringing that attention in a different way, than just a plain old store of value. But again, making it fun to not only have Bitcoin, but to actually collect it in a sense. And I think that adds even more value back to the Bitcoin, blockchain itself. So curious, Al, what's your thoughts on all this in terms of that?
I don't know about anything like metaverse plays. That definitely doesn't feel like the vibe. It feels like it's just, putting ideas and art on cave walls at this stage, if I'm being honest. I think a main difference from Ethereum is that every inscription is numbered as part of the same set, right? So it makes every inscription ever refer to its place in that set. And I think narratives will definitely form historically there. I don't know if it's going to be more like people who just want to acquire and collect artifacts, or if there'll be societies or clubs of sorts. I mean, that's kind of what we're doing with Pepe's, but we're also just figuring it out as we go, and excited to be building in this realm.
Yeah, I think we'll see new narratives form. One of the challenges with the NFT space as it has existed is kind of due to the malleable nature of these and the uncertainty of like where they exist. And I think what Bitcoin provides is certainty so that you can go experiment. And that's actually how inscriptions even came about to be in the first place. Bitcoin is a fairly straightforward protocol. And so it just takes someone who looks at it a little bit differently and says, okay, there are these kind of opportunities. I'm going to take advantage of its security. I'm going to try to throw some shit at the wall. So I think right now, if I want to give you like a meta for the next 2 or 3 years, it's throw as much shit at the wall as possible, because a lot of it will stick. I think Bitcoin being this kind of thing that anarcho-capitalists, gold bugs, and energy people that's great. And that'll still continue to be a narrative. But now I think it's the era of the creative and the innovator. So I think the future is very bright for people who want to experiment.
Yeah, and in this near future, we had a question or almost a suggestion from Diamond XC. This might be better suited for Felix or Firestorm. When Neo Tokyo Ordinal?
Well,
After this Spaces.
Owl's a citizen. Owl has the nodes. I do not.
Let's go, Owl. Let's set one
That'll
up
be
for
cool.
the citizens who are like, ready to jump in the dark back alley and do some OTC trading to get in early here.
To inscribe more. I only had ideas up to the first 10K. I'm just blown away by it at this point.
Yeah, I inscribed a bunch early. I was like, oh, this shit'll never take off. And
I thought it would be months.
yeah. So here we are.
What else did you put on there, Charlie, besides the message to Lolo Streams?
I probably won't be specific, but I inscribed my company's logo and I inscribed my handle. I inscribed some memes and shit posts. Our pet, yeah, took my wife's here. My dog, cool stuff like that. Maybe I wasn't. The narrative has progressed so quickly that this idea of a collection to me was still like, oh, I remember seeing Ordinal Punks, which sold for what, like 10 Bitcoin or something, maybe higher. I saw that at like 0.01 Bitcoin. I was like, oh, that's too expensive. That's dumb. I realized if I think something's dumb doesn't mean other people will think it is. One of the values of Bitcoin, common beliefs of Bitcoiners is that the free market decides value. So clearly those things are valuable to people.
Crazy early and also crazy fast. It's just been a few days and it's like, yeah, it's catching on like wildfire. Zay, hi, were there any other questions in the comments that...
We got the conductor. We could bring him up. We've been chatting with him a bit. One person was asking if we could change these inscriptions. If you own an ordinal, could you make any changes to them, or they're done? They're as is.
I think it's immutable, bro.
Yeah, right. That's the whole idea.
Okay, so currently you can, technically you can inscribe a Satoshi multiple times. So you can have multiple inscriptions attributed to one ordinal. Currently, the client does not facilitate that, but it will soon, TM. And then there's also this idea of recursion for inscriptions, and I don't quite understand that, but there is some more expression that can be added.
All right, well, that's cool. We do have the conductor up here. If you got a quick question, we're in the last few minutes here, so
amazing.
Go for it.
Thank you so much for having me, guys. And this is all very, very exciting. Just a quick question to ask. Number one, do you think that Bitcoin NFTs will overtake Ethereum? And the second question is why should people be paying attention to Bitcoin NFTs right now? And what is sort of the advantage here of getting in so early?
I mean, we're definitely heading into speculative territory with an answer to that question. I don't know. It's the most valuable crypto. It's the household name. Everyone who's been in the NFT space for a long time knows just how fun it is to collect these things. It's not crazy to imagine that some of the Bitcoin community will feel similarly, especially once they experiment. It's a bullish black swan event for NFTs, and it's still the beginning. It was invented like 2 weeks ago. I just think there's no way this doesn't become incredibly significant in the entire ecosystem. So I'd learn about it to be able to take advantage of that in whatever way makes sense.
We did just have a punk sale yesterday for 9.5 Bitcoin, or about 214,000.
Fucking crazy.
That's insane.
I don't know. I'll probably make no statement on what I think it does to other NFT collections.
Uh-oh.
Right.
I think the Decepticons got him finally.
Keep your secrets.
What do you say, Firestorm? We're heading towards closing for an hour space. I'm sure, there's a lot of interest here. We could do a follow-up or keep this going for a while.
Yeah, I feel the evolution that'll happen just over the next few weeks, I feel like we can definitely do a follow-up. Thanks for your question, the conductor. Thanks for hopping in, Al. It was nice to talk to you. We hadn't really chatted before, but I know you are in the Citadel.
I am. I tried to see if anyone else was into these, like, I don't know, a week ago or something, and just no one had quite caught wind of them yet.
Yeah, you were just talking gibberish at that point.
Bitcoin NFTs, guys.
It was in the news.
Yeah, the Neo Tokyo news, you would have heard it first there. Cool. Yeah, let's wrap it up. Kyle, appreciate you coming on as well.
Yeah, no doubt. This was a blast, and very curious to see where this plays out in the not so distant future. I imagine it's going to generate some news, some hype. So, yeah, definitely going to keep an eye on Ordinals for sure.
I don't live in Tulsa anymore, but next time I'm visiting, you and I and Charlie got to hang out.
1000%. I'm game.
Cool. Felix, say hi. Thank you.
Always a pleasure.
Thank you. Yeah, always a pleasure. Thank you for having me on.
Cool. Well, the recordings go up on our Spotify and YouTube channels, so you can check the links for those recordings if you missed any of this. We also launched a Core Games Neo Tokyo Virtual City today. That was up on our Twitch stream and had a bunch of people in our community hopping in there and checking it out. Next week, we'll have a Core Games tournament with some pretty good prizing, S2s and bytes. So check out the tweet with all the details tomorrow from the Neo Tokyo account. Yeah, we do these almost every week. Sometimes we skip a week and wait for a really juicy topic like this, but we appreciate everybody stopping by. I'm Firestorm, and this was Neo Tokyo Interlinked.